Good day, sir. I'm Crystal Asil-oy, a second-year BS Criminology. So, for today's video, I'm going to discuss the Chapter 2, the Nationalism and Patriotism. So, nationalism is an ideology and movement defined by promoting the interest of a particular nation, in the particular with the aim of acquiring and maintaining the nation's sovereignty over its country of origin. So, nationalism claims that each nation should regulate itself, free from outside intervention. So, the nation is a natural and ideal political basis, and that the nation is the only legitimate source of political authority. It also aims to build and maintain a single nation identity based on shared social characteristics in such as culture, language, religion, political and beliefs, and a distinctive shared history, and to promote nation unity or solidarity. So nationalism therefore seeks to preserve and encourage a nation. Traditional culture and cultural revivals have been connected to nationalist movement. So it also fosters pride, domestic accomplishment, and it's strongly associated with patriotism. Nationalism is often paired with other ideologies. For instance, conservatism or socialism. So, nationalism is identification with one's own nation and support for its interest. So, especially to the exclusion or detriment of the interest of other nation. So, nationalism is an idea and movement that hold that the nation should be congruent with the state. So, as a movement, nationalism tends to promote the interest of a particular nation or as in a group of people. So, especially with the aim of gaining the maintaining the nation's sovereignty or self-governance or over its homeland. So, next is type of nationalism. Nationalism can be expressed along civil, ethnic, cultural, religious, or ideological lines. So, these self-definition of countries are used to classify distinct, mutually exclusive, and many nationalist movements combine to differing degrees some or all all of these components. So we have the 14 types of nationalism. So we have the ethnic, civic, or civil nationalism, expansionment nationalism, romantic nationalism, cultural nationalism, third world nationalism, liberal, religious, pan, diaspora, stateless, national, revolutionary, left-wing nationalism. So, ethnic nationalism or ethno-nationalism, the country is described from prior generation in terms of ethnicity and descent. It also involved the concept of a shared culture among group member. So, and general shared language. So, the nation membership is hereditary. The state derived political legitimacy from its status as the ethnic group's homeland and from its obligation to safeguard the partially domestic group and as a group to promote its family and social life. So in a contrast to Western opinion of country defined by its geography, territory, theorist Anthony D. Smith utilized the word ethnic nationalism for non-Western notion of nationalism. So, ethnic is also known as ethno-nationalism. So, it is a form of nationalism wherein the nation and nationality are defined in terms of ethnicity. So, with emphasis on ethnocentric approach to various political issues relate to national affirmation of a particular ethnic group. So, for example, is ethnationalism include the differentiation between the Gujarat and Punjab tribes of India, Croatians, and Bosnians of the former state of Yugoslavia, or now divided into several countries. So, and the Hutus and Tutsis of Rwanda, where ethno-nationalism had devastating consequence for part of the national population. So, second is civil nationalism or civil nationalism. The state derived political legitimacy from its citizen active involvement and the extent to which it reflects the will of the individuals. So, civic nationalism lies within the tradition of rationalism and liberalism, but it is contrast with the ethnic nationalism as a type of nationalism. So, civic nation membership is regarded to be voluntary. The growth of representative democracy in nations such as the United States and France was affected by civil nation values. So, state nationalism, often coupled with ethnic nationalism, is a version of civic nationalism. It means that country is community of those who contribute to the state maintenance and strength, and that there is the person to contribute to the objective. So the country is supposed to be a community in those who contribute to the state maintenance and strength, and where the person exists expressly in the society to contribute to that objective. So this often results in fascisms, generally characterized by authoritarianism and nationalism. Fascism is political ideology. So, civic nation, also known as liberal nationalism. So, it is a form of nationalism identified by political philosophers who believe in inclusive form of nationalism that adheres to traditional liberal values of freedom, tolerance, equality, and individual rights. So, third is expansionist nationalism, in a radical form of imperialism that include independent, patriotic feeling with a faith in expansionment, generally through military aggression. So the word was coined in the late 19th century as European power indulged in the scramble for Africa in the name of domestic glory, but was most closely linked with militarist government in the 20th century. So including fascist Italy, Nazi Germany, the Japanese Empire, and the Balkan nation of Albania or Great Albania, and Bulgaria or Greater Bulgaria, and Croatia or Greater Croatia, and Hungary. So, nations are not believed to be equivalent to their right to self-determination. So, some countries are believed to possess features or qualities that make them superior to others. Therefore, Expansionist nationalism argues the right of the state to expand its boundaries at the cost of its neighbors. So, expansionist is an aggressive radical form of nationalism or ethnic nationalism that incorporates autonomous, heightened ethnic consciousness and patriotic sentiment with atavistic first and hatreds focus on other or foreign people. So framing of beliefs in expansion or recovery of formerly owned territories through militaristic means. So 5 is cultural nationalism. The country is described by shared culture, not solely civic or ethnic. Chinese nationalism, partially due to China many national monarchies or membership in the nation is neither completely voluntary nor hereditary. So however, a tradition culture can be more readily integrated into the lives of any person, particularly if the person can obtain his or her abilities at an early point of his or her own lives. In cultural nationalism is a form of nationalism in which the nation is defined by a shared culture. Therefore, it focuses on a national identity shaped by cultural, traditional, and common language, but not on a concept of common ancestry, race, or ethnicity. So, number 6 is third world nation. Nationalist feelings are the outcome of opposition to colonial rule to survive and maintain a domestic identity. So, for example of the third world nationalist ideologies are African nationalism and Arab nationalism. Other important nationalist movements in the developing world have included Indian nationalism, Chinese nationalism, and the ideas of the Mexican Revolution and Haitian Revolution. So 7, liberal nationalism is a kind of nationalism lately defended by political philosophers who think that a non-xenophobic form of nationalism compatible with liberal values of liberty, tolerance, equality, and individual rights can exist. So it is asserted that in order to lead meaningful, independent life, people need a nation identity, and thus liberal democracies need domestic identity to work correctly. So, liberal nationalists often defend the importance of domestic identity by stating that people need and domestic identity to lead meaningful, independent life, and that liberal democratic politics need domestic identity to work correctly. So, liberal nationalism is an impressive attempt to tie together a wide range of issues often kept apart. So, personal autonomy, cultural membership, political obligation, particularity versus impartiality, and moral duties and global duties. 8. Religious nationalism is connected to a specific religious faith, church, or affiliation. It can be seen that a shared religious contribute to a sense of the most domestic unity and a mutual bond between the nation people. So this connection can be divided into two dimensions: religion's politicization and religion converse effect on politics. So in a former aspect, it can be seen that a shared religion contributes to a sense of domestic unity, a common bond between the nation people, the support of a nation identity, comparable to a shared ethnicity, language, or culture, is another political element of religion. More ideological is the impact of religion on politics. So, it is a relationship of nationalism to particular religious belief, dogma, or affiliation. This relationship can be broken down into two aspects: the politicization or religious and the influence of religious in politics. So 9. Diaspora nationalism is a ethnic population residing outside their traditional home. In this type of nationalism, there is a national sense, e.g. the Irish in the United States, in the Jews in the United States and elsewhere. So, diaspora, or as Benedict Anderson terms it, long-distance nationalism, generally referred to nationalist feeling among a diaspora such as Irish and the United States, Jews around the world after expulsion from Jerusalem, the Lebanese in the Americas and Africa, or Armenians in Europe and United States. 11 is stateless nationalism. On a nationalist basis, an ethnic or cultural monetary when in a nation state aims independence. So, in a stateless nation is a ethnic group or nation that does not possess its own state and is not the majority population in any nation state. The term stateless implies that the group should have such a state. So, number 12, national conversation. A political term mainly used in Europe to describe a version of conservatism that focus more on domestic interests than conventional conservatism. So, while not being unduly nationalist or pursuing a far-right agenda. So, 13, revolutionary nationalism is an ideological theory that calls for a domestic group united by shared sense of intent and destiny. It also known as radical nationalism. It was first ascribed and strongly promulgated by Benito Mussolini to followers of revolutionary syndicalism in France and Italy at the start of 20th century. This intellectual synthesis of radical nationalism and dissident society was created. So it also a broad label that has been applied to many different type of nationalist political movement that wish to achieve their goals through a revolution against the established order. Lastly is, a left-wing nationalism. Left-wing nationalism, also sometimes referred to as socialist nationalism. So relates to any political movement combining left-wing or socialism with nationalism. Notable example include the 26 July movement of Fidel Castro, which launched the Cuban Revolution in 1959 to oust the American-backed Fulgencio Batista, Ireland Sinn Féin, Israel Labor, Zionism, and the African National Congress. So let's proceed to patriotism. So patriotism is our national pride, a sense of love, dedication, and attachment to country and an alliance with other people who were the same impression. This attachment can be a mixture of many distinct emotions, so including ethnic, cultural, political, or historical elements relate to one's own country. It is a predominant virtue linked to a nation's love with greater emphasis on values and beliefs. One who is patriotic will be willing to offer any sacrifice to his nation. He'll never live alone egoistically. So for example, for the sake of his country, a soldier makes the ultimate sacrifice of his life. So for no other reason than being a citizen of the nation, patriotism is a dedication to one's nation. In essence, so patriotism is a sense of attachment and dedication to a country or nation or political community or just country love. So English word patriot is first known in the Elizabethan period. It originates from Latin. In 6th century, patriota via Middle French, meaning countryman. Finally, from Greek or patriotes, meaning from the same nation, or patris, meaning fatherland, or Liddell and Scott in 2013. The abstract known patriotism appears in the early 18th century. So, patriotism, feeling attachment and commitment to a country, nation, or political community. Patriotism is love of country, and nationalism is loyalty to one's nation. Are often taken to be synonymous, yet patriotism has its origin some and 2000 years prior to the rise of nationalism in the 19th century. So we have the three kinds of patriotism. First is patriotism of duty. So this includes fidelity to one's nation through material acts. This is military service patriotism and other selfless sacrifice types. This is where patriotism becomes embodied and its ideals take praiseworthy particular action. So, in other words, it presents the duty of special concern for the well-being of one's country and compatriots as a device for assigning to individual some universal duties. So, patriotic duty owes its moral force to the moral force of those universal duties. So, second is patriotism of affection. This is the patriotism of the heart. It is about one's internal desire for his country well-being. The patriotism of affection can be seen in the patriotism of duty, but it does not necessarily result in it. One can't truly love his country and yet be crowded, just as one can theoretically fulfill a patriotic duty and yet feel apathetic about the country welfare. So, it defined as love for one's own country is mainly characterized by psychological traits of affection, a sense of identification, and special concern for the well-being of patria. Lastly is patriotism of manners. This is consumes patriotism, written and unwritten. The patriotism of manners is to place one hand over the heart during the national anthem. It can be performed by anyone without actually needing affection or duty patriotism, while the above type of patriotism show at least in part. So the real beliefs and hopes of a person, the patriotism of manner establishes mostly a set of protocols. So this ethic of patriotism could be in the manner usefully be supplemented and complemented by the aesthetic and emotion of patriotism. So next is we have the fourth type of patriotism. We have the first is personal patriotism. It is emotional and voluntary. The patriot adheres to certain patriotic values, so such as respect for the flag or the honoring of veterans. Other expression of personal patriotism include enlisting in the army, public service, and participation in the political process through voting or other form of activism. So it is emotional and voluntary. And the patriot adheres to certain patriotic values, such as respect for the flag or the honoring of veterans. Second is patriotism, official patriotism, promoted by the government, which has a highly symbolic and ceremonial content. It is a logical consequence of the state itself would serve legitimacy from being the expression of the common good of the political community. So national monuments and veterans days and commemoration ceremonies are typically examples. Often official patriotism is highly regulated by protocol with specific method for handling flags or specific pledge and display of allegiance. So official patriotism relies heavily on symbolic acts such as displaying the flag, singing the nation anthem, singing a pledge, participating in a mass rally, placing in a patriot bumper on one's vehicle, or any other way of publicly proclaiming allegiance to the state. So, 3. Symbolic patriotism. No, official patriotism relies heavily on symbolic act such as displaying the flag, singing. No. So official patriotism relies heavily on symbolic acts such as display the flag, singing the national anthem, singing a pledge, participating in a mass rally, placing a patriotic bumper sticker on one vehicle, or any other way of publicly proclaiming allegiance to the state. So 3, symbolic patriotism in wartime is intended to raise morally, in turn contributing to the war effort. So 4, peacetime patriotism cannot be so easily linked to a measurable gain for the state, but the patriot does not see it as inferior. So last is we have the difference between patriotism and nationalism. While the term patriotism and nationalism were once regarded as synonymous, distinct connotation were assumed, while both are people feeling of affection for the nation. The values on which they are based are very distinct. So, patriotism feeling are based on the country positive values like liberty, justice, equality. The patriot thinks that both their country, state, system, and individual are inherently good and working together to achieve a better quality life. On the other hand, nationalism emotion are based on the belief that one's nation is superior to all others. So it also holds a connotation of other countries' distrust or disapproval, leading to the premise that other states are competitors, while patriots do not degrade other countries automatically. Nationalists do something to the point of calling for the global dominance of their country. Nationalism is popular opposite of globalization by its protectionist belief. So the difference between the patriotism and nationalism is there is a considerable difference between nationalism and patriotism. While nationalism emphasizes a unity of cultural past with inclusion of the language and heritage, patriotism is based on love toward people with a greater emphasis on values and beliefs. So that's all.